bravefathers.com. Welcome to the Brave Fathers Show. And now, the prophecy.
Oh yes, let's talk about this sexy poison. Sexy poison. Why are we calling it sexy poison? Because there is something that makes men attracted to abusive women. Why do men get attracted to abusive women? Why do they stay with those women? Why do they stick around? Why does it happen? Someone once said to me that the best pussy is crazy pussy. Now, I don't know what he was referring to exactly, probably talking about cats, but I would argue that that statement is not true based on my personal experience. You see, if all you know is crazy, then you will think that that's the best. Here I'm going to present an argument today that you may not like, but I think it's a necessary argument that will help us men move forward, will help us get a better position in society that already is biased against men. There are many things in place that don't work well for us, many things that you could argue put us at a disadvantage, especially in marriage, of course, in family court, and going through a divorce process. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. So, when it comes to dating, a lot of people say that looks, money, and status are the secret ingredients, and they are the keys to attracting women and to keeping them. I will have to admit that at a point in time, I did subscribe to this belief. I believed it. There was a time where I was going through a lot of financial hardship, and I didn't receive respect from the female I was with at the time. And I thought if I made more money, she would respect me. In fact, I confronted her about it and I said, look, if I had more money, would you treat me better? Now, what's interesting is that she was actually taken aback by the question because at the time she hadn't even considered that that was the reason why she was disrespecting me. There was a different reason. And that reason was I didn't understand certain dynamics between males and females, between men and women. But there was another layer to it. By asking her that question, I revealed something to her that made the relationship worse. And what I revealed was that I was actually quite insecure about myself. Let me put my timer on. I was quite insecure about myself because of, come on, because of my financial situation. There was one very attractive woman I was seeing for a little while. We never got serious. We had some fun. And she told me she had a boyfriend who was very rich, but they broke up after he lost his money. And I was like, well, obviously you only wanted him for his money. And she said, no. When he lost his money, he became a different person. And she just didn't like who he had become and couldn't be with him. So the reason why I'm raising these issues of looks, money, and status is that I think that's a very false statement, and that actually opens men to a lot more abuse than they would otherwise have if they understood certain dynamics and how things work. We are all familiar with Amber Heard's, who Johnny Depp went through an ordeal with her in court. We are familiar with the story of Jasleen Singh, who I would argue is very disrespectful of her husband, Akash Singh, the comedian. Online, she's very disrespectful of him. I would argue some of the videos of Jada Pinkett-Smith and some of her statements, many of her statements, are actually abusive and disrespectful. To my understanding, I think Will Smith is divorcing Jada Pinkett-Smith at this point. Amber Heard, obviously, and Johnny Depp are not together. And Mr. Akash Singh is still with his beautiful wife, Jasleen Singh. And you would ask yourself, what would make those guys stay? And the obvious thing that stands out is the sexual attractiveness of these females. They do look good. They do have nice bodies. They are all intelligent women, of course, but it doesn't appear that that's the reason men are attracted to them. We are visual creatures. We like what we see. And when we like it, we go for it. So my first argument today is that a lot of men stay with abusive women because of the sexual appeal. Many guys would say, they would argue that it's difficult to attract a woman in what they call the modern dating scene. That it's difficult to attract someone you really like, physically, visually. So when they find these women who, according to some people, are hard to get or hard to come by, they just don't want to give it up. So men see this woman, they're like, wow, she's so sexy, she's so beautiful, I want her. I want to be in a relationship with her. And then they end up in a relationship. It turns out the woman does disrespectful and abusive things, sometimes even gets violent. I believe in the case of Amber Heard, she did get violent, and yet they stay, right? Then obviously those women also know how to charm a man, how to make him feel desired, how to make him feel wanted. I remember one gentleman I spoke to, one father I spoke to, said she was much younger than him and he just found it very flattering. And that's why he got involved with her. So this brings me to the second argument I want to make today, which is that most men who end up in abusive relationships or get up abused by women are not very experienced with dating on their terms. What do I mean? The vast majority of men out there, especially today, end up in relationships by chance. They do not deliberately go out and approach various women and then select from the women they have approached, from the women who reciprocate interest. In general, men seem to be more casual about dating in the sense of they have their social circle, they have their work, they have events, and when they stumble upon a woman and they get together, that's how they end up in relationships. And in fact, many people advocate for this approach. And I don't think that's a good approach because it reduces the number of women you can choose from. Because if you open yourself to approaching women, right, just saying hello, starting a conversation, then the world is your oyster, essentially. You could approach 1,000 women and choose the one that is the best amongst all those women. But if all you do is expect by chance to meet a woman, you will not get the experience. When you approach a lot of women, you will start realizing that there are patterns to behavior. You will start seeing that certain women have a less agreeable disposition, they are less respectful, and you become less tolerant to abusive behaviors. So little things that you might accept otherwise, you would let go of them this time. You would not be with that woman. I remember there was someone who asked me on my ex profile about a girl that I was dating who had one of the sexiest bodies I've seen in my lifetime. Like all the women have sexy bodies, but this one was specifically what I liked. We ended up not being together, and this young gentleman asked me, why did I let her go? even though she was so sexy. And I responded that she had a lot of behaviors that I wouldn't tolerate now, but I tolerated then. She did things that I wouldn't put up with this time. So one of the reasons, perhaps the third argument, is that the women keep pulling the men back in, and they choose men who will put up with their abusive ways. You see, when you watch TV, when you watch movies, right? A lot of times we see a female who is quite rude, quite disrespectful, quite insulting to a man, mocks him, looks down on him, puts him down, and that's considered funny, right? We laugh at it. In real life, it's actually quite painful to experience that. But many males are conditioned to ignore the feeling of disrespect they feel, and instead they think that it's mature, it's respectable to allow that because it shows you are not easily swayed, that you have, I think they call it frame in the red pill, that you are not weak because you are not fazed by the insults and you're still there. And I do agree that you should not be fazed by the insults, because you should not be, just like you should not be fazed by the compliments. I will talk about that in a moment. But that does not mean you should tolerate those insults, right? So I knew one guy who, when in the midst of friends, there was a dinner they had, and one of the guys, got some very, very good job after graduating. And I think he was in a similar field as the guy I'm talking about, a friend. So my friend's girl said, "Oh, yeah, if only you could get such a job." And everybody laughed, right? Because they knew he was struggling financially at the time. So they laughed. And he took it. And I remember there was times he would want to go somewhere and she would tell him no, he couldn't go. And he just would listen to her. And those things are considered normal. They call that being a partner these days, right? When a woman does it to a man. So a lot of guys who are actually abused don't know they are being abused. They think when she smacks them a little bit, when she insults them a little bit, puts them down, makes fun of them, including in front of other people, screams at them, that is just part and parcel of a relationship. They think it's normal to go through that when you are with a woman, right? So that is one of the reasons why they stay with abusive women. And the woman knows, if she's abusive, how to pull you back in if you start pulling away. So a lot of guys wrongly think that they are managing the relationship. They are showing her, "Oh, yeah, I've taken a stand and she's going to change." And a lot of coaches teach that. And yes, it's an important step, but you're not supposed to stay with that woman. Yes, you will not be able at first to leave because your mentality, your emotional level, your understanding of the world will not be sufficient for you to realize you are in an abusive relationship. Because if it was, you wouldn't have gotten into that situation in the first place. Believe it or not, if you are being abused, you are picked as a target. You were chosen for this. The person who is doing the abuse chose you as their victim. That's how it works. They tested your boundaries, realized, "Oh, he's loose with his boundaries," and they went in. That's why, for example, I don't allow a woman to call me an idiot and things like that. Say, "Oh, he's just an idiot." No. A lot of these things, for me, is we're done. Because there's no way I would want to be with a woman who acted that way towards me. There's never a way for us to be in a relationship. Like, I understand people joke and stuff like that. But let's say I just met a woman and we went on a date and she called me an idiot. There's not going to be another minute of that date. It's not going to happen. It's not. Now, you ask yourself, why is it that men often don't know that they are being abused? And I've already stated that the way the media portrays men, it teaches us, it teaches men, it teaches women that it's okay to be disrespectful towards men. I remember a discussion on YouTube. I should have clipped that. It was in the comments, and the girl actually says, she says, oh, you couldn't hit men. She wasn't sure if that was allowed, because it is so ingrained that she thought you are allowed as a female to hit men, that it's okay to do that. I've heard females say, look, I can hit you, you can't hit me. Right? They think it's okay for a man to be hit by them, but they don't expect the same in return. They think it's normal. But on the flip side, a lot of men think it's normal for women, for females, to take out their frustrations on them. They think it's normal. They actually think that that's what a relationship is about, at least partly. For her to be bitchy, full of shit, complaining, nagging, even deceiving, and you show how masculine you are by tolerating it and trying to show her another way. But the secret is she knows another way. She just doesn't want to do that other way with you, right? And she cannot do the other way of being respectful and polite and treating a man good long enough for her to attract any other man. But she will make you think that you are better than others by staying with them. And frankly, a lot of guys think if she's good looking enough, it's worth tolerating the abuse. A lot of guys think that way. I probably thought that way at some points too. So when we have boys from a very young age who are taught that they are somehow bad, somehow inferior, somehow a threat to females, and they are raised with that guilt, as they keep growing older, they will think that the bad attitudes they get from females is justified because their whole lives they've never been told, look, you need to have a boundary with this woman. There is nothing in the media today, in the mainstream media, that teaches men to have a boundary to protect themselves from abusive women. Nothing. And in fact, a man putting boundaries very often is seen as a negative thing. Now, when I say boundaries, I'm not referring to telling a woman what to do with her body, with her time, and so forth, because I don't believe that it's worth a man's time and energy stressing over what a female is doing, even if it's his wife. If she breaks the boundary, you should be willing to walk away if it's that serious. You know, I'm not saying get divorced as a sign of, the little sign of trouble, but certain things are not little signs of trouble. They are big problems. They are very big problems. Even a sexless marriage is a big problem. I have no understanding of how people stay for decades without sex because their wife said no. I'm not saying cheat. You should let her know that, listen, I'm going out to find women who want me. That if I were ever to be in that position, that's what I would do. And that's exactly what I think should be done. Because it is not right for one person to control your life. That's why I don't believe in men controlling women's lives. And I don't believe men being controlled by women either. Right? Leadership is not about control. You lead as a man, you put a way forward, you say, look, this is what we're doing. You attract a woman who wants to do what you say you're going to do, who is with your plan, right? And that's it. She makes a choice. She's still an adult, she's still a human being who has the right to her life, just like you do. Just like you do. So I would argue that a lot of the societal norms today actually encourage abuse. if you look at TikTok today and a lot of these short form videos, you see a lot of women almost bragging about their disorders, their personality disorders. And it's expected that whoever dates them will tolerate it. I actually saw a guy selling a product as to how to, be the 1% man who is able to stay, with women with certain personality disorders. And those women are abusive, right? So he teaches men how to stay with abusive women. There wouldn't be such a product if there wasn't a market for it somewhere, if there wasn't a sign that men want it, So it's a difficult one. When I was going through my experience, I remember speaking to one of the workers at the shelter for men, and he told me something to the effect of the average guy comes back, I think 7 to 9 times before he actually leaves her. So they keep going back and forth. They keep trying to get back with the woman because the other reason is that abuse creates an addictive situation. So abuse victims are very often addicted to the perpetrators. And this goes for both men and women. So it gets to a point where the person who is being abused does not want to live without the abuser. That is the safest place for them in their minds. The world becomes so horrible outside that they prefer the safety and the concentration of the abuser's energy on them. They prefer that to having to face the dangers of the outside world. They'd rather be with the person who hurts them, right? The devil you know, than go out and be hurt by somebody else. And unfortunately, that's the reality. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of guys actually don't know how to attract women. They don't know how to go out and meet women just like that. They think they have to depend on looks, money, status to get those things. By the way, as you watch this, click the like button, click the subscribe button so that we can have more of these discussions with brave fathers. And if you need help with your UK family court case as a father, perhaps facing false allegations, you want to see your kids, make sure you click the link below to go to bravefathers.com so you get in touch so we can discuss a way forward for you to find a way forward with your case. Right. So I was talking about men thinking that it's looks, money, and status that gets women. Others think it's clever pickup lines and so forth. But you see, abusers, regardless of their gender, they are very, very experienced with dealing with potential victims. They are very, very experienced. You are not the first person they've done it with. You're not. So a lot of the things that red pill teachers, for example, or pickup artists teach, the problem with those things is that they do provide some kind of result, right? But the results are not lasting. And sooner or later, they backfire on the man who applies them. So what do I mean? So for example, people talk about shit tests, and I hate that word, that phrase. And I remember one client of mine was really, really, intent on that. I know I've argued with pickup artists many times about this, but a shit test is essentially disrespect. If she's testing you about how masculine you are, that means she's doubting your masculinity. If she's doubting your masculinity, that means she does not respect you. She doesn't fully see you as whatever you think she should be seeing you as whoever you are. And people will say, yeah, but when you pass her shit test and she sees who you are, that's when she gives you respect. But in reality, what happens is when you pass the test, so to speak, you've shown willingness to pass her tests. So there will be more coming. And again, a lot of guys take pride in those things. They talk on that on forums, say, oh, she did this. They're like, yeah, do this, hold your frame or whatever. But the reality is, in most cases, you should leave. And because most guys, most of us, and at the point in time I was that way too, had never experienced a woman who treated us well for the duration of the relationship. We've not experienced the love, the respect, the care of a female who values us just as we are. And in most cases, to do that, you have to value yourself. But when you pass a woman's shit test, you are communicating that her value is higher than yours, which immediately makes her lose respect for you. You are communicating that you will jump through hoops for her and that she's the best option you have at the time. Think about it. If you had other options, would you stay there? And then the argument that usually comes back is what I said in the beginning. Oh, but she's so sexy. But she's so beautiful. She's a 10, she's a 9, she's an 11 or whatever. And that makes it different. That makes the rules different. One movie that I have to watch again, but shows this concept, is Casino, with I believe Robert De Niro is in it and Sharon Stone. And Sharon Stone had this pimp, and no matter how rich De Niro was and whoever else she would be seeing, she would always go back to that pimp, always. And he had the full control of her. And you can't argue that it was money because he wasn't the richest guy in the movie at all. Not by a stretch. So it showed, obviously still a movie, but it gave an example of a plausible scenario where a woman does not care about your money. And again, if you want to look at real life, let's look at Will Smith. Let's look at Akash Singh. Let's look at Johnny Depp. And I'm sure you can think of many more of these men who have the looks, they have the money, they have the status, and yet they are disrespected by the woman they are with. You could argue Amber Heard was also famous. Okay, perhaps. You could argue Jada Pinkett-Smith was also famous. Okay, maybe, perhaps. That doesn't change anything, but let's say, okay. What about Jasleen Singh? She was nobody. Nobody knew who she was. The only reason why we know her is because of Akash Singh. That's the only reason why we know her. And I know a lot of guys would tolerate the stuff she's doing because Akash Singh is tolerating it. Just for a chance to have sex with her, just to be around her in her presence, to hold her. But that gives you an explanation. That gives you an explanation as to why men stay with abusive women. Now, if we were to go deeper, most of those guys have also been traumatized in their childhoods. So the trauma makes them seek a partner, don't even like that word, makes them seek a female who is compatible with that pain that they are used to, right? So a lot of us are not used to being treated well. We are not used to happiness, excitement with women, right? Let's be honest about that. We are not used to it. So when a woman approaches us and gives us that, but at the same time, we have some kind of pain that we want relief from, that attention makes us feel special. It makes us feel like, wow, we finally found a woman who is different. We found a woman who makes us feel better, stronger, more powerful than any other woman we've had before. But I would argue that it is not a woman's job to make you feel good about yourself. It's not a woman's job to make you feel like a man. I would even argue that she has no such power, no such ability to do that, because she's a human being like you. Every human being is responsible for his own emotions as an adult. Now, of course, having the right person in your life does help to feel good in general, and another person can uplift you and can help. That's true. But you cannot rely on that as a man. It's almost like emotionally and spiritually, men today, especially, are very deficient. We've not developed ourselves to the degree where we would never be with a female that treat us badly. Not only that, when men say we want a woman who gives you peace, excuse me, how does she give you peace? If she doesn't exist, don't you have peace already? So how does she give you peace? A woman who makes you feel like a man. How? You're a man with or without her. So how is she supposed to make you feel anything about yourself? And I mentioned before, you should not be swayed by compliments either. And it's funny when I see women trying to trick me sometimes, like I'll go to a bar. I remember this girl came to me and she was like, "Oh, I like your earrings, it's so nice." And I knew she was just hassling me, right? A lot of guys would think it's a good sign. Now, again, I'm not gonna go into an argument on that, and I'll explain why in a moment. But she was trying to, I know she was just hassling me, probably thinking I would buy her a drink. I said, "Oh." I basically said something to her to test her immediately to see if she's interested in me or not. And my test, she did not pass. She wasn't interested in me, and I could actually tell already. But you know, so I ended the conversation. I said, "It was a pleasure to meet you. I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening." And she was attractive. She was actually someone I noticed whilst walking in. From a distance, I was like, "Oh, she's nice. I'll probably talk to her later." And she came to talk to me. And I know a lot of guys would think I should have spoken to her. But you see, that's the difference between guys who date on their terms and guys who don't. That's the experience the experience actually. That's the difference between when you have actual experience and when you don't. And pickup artists who do have some level of experience would argue that I missed an opportunity. But you see, I don't see the woman as the opportunity. I see myself as the opportunity. I see myself as the opportunity because I know myself, and I know that if the woman is right for me and I'm right for the woman, right? Because I'm not right for every woman. She could actually like me, genuinely be interested in me and attractive, but she's not right for me. So I have to live my life in a way that I don't allow her to come into my life. That is the tricky part. And again, because people like pickup artists, the red pill and so forth, think that passing a shit test is okay, that a woman showing interest automatically means she is interested. And just the opportunity to be around her should be always taken if she's sexy enough, if she's beautiful enough. But no. And I'm aware that very few people are willing to even look at relationships at that level. Very few people are willing to do that. What's going on here? One second. What's going on here? What's going on here? So, I'm not going to be popular for this view, but I'm just going to say it for the sake of posterity, because I think at some point the truth has to be told. Now, to start with, a man should not blame himself for being abused. A man should not put himself down or think less of himself because he was abused. At the same time, a man must accept that the abuse happened because of things he wasn't aware of, that he did or didn't do. This does not excuse the abusive female at all. But you see, it's like a game of chess. It doesn't matter what you thought. What matters is the move that you made on the board. It doesn't matter how you feel about it. It does not matter how the opponent feels about it. The only thing that speaks on the board is the board itself and the pieces on it, the position, as we call it. So the position is the only thing that matters. So if you find yourself in position where you are being abused by a woman, it means you made the wrong moves. Again, this is not to blame you. This is not to put you down, but it means you did some things wrong. I have been in that position. And upon reflection, last night, I realized I was in that position more often than I would want to accept. But it's true. Because I look at some of my early relationships, I was like, wait a minute. I was just putting up with a nonsense. And yes, one reason, by the way, is we like to be seen with beautiful women, right? We like the status that comes from it, the feeling of, yeah, I'm with her, she's with me, and I'm hitting that. And people see that, right? That is a thing that we do sometimes as guys. I think at some point in time, that has to be really almost a non-existent thing for you, because you have to live your life according to what you want and what you need and what you must do. So the first point is that, what I said, you have to take responsibility for yourself. The moment you realize you are in an abusive relationship, it's up to you to figure out how you're going to get out, because everyone's circumstances are different. You may have kids, you may have property, you may have nowhere else to go, but you have to figure out an exit plan, and you have to start working on it immediately, because these women are dangerous. They are dangerous, as you probably know now. You also have to understand that society is not going to be sympathetic to you. You already know this perhaps, but a lot of guys don't get it. You're not going to find pity online. You're not going to have people feel sorry for you and act on that. That's not going to happen. You will literally have to find a way to move on. You will have to find a way to get closure on your own. Not that you don't deserve closure from the abuser and the system, you do. But here's the trick. The abuser knows that as long as you're looking for closure, you will keep coming back somehow. Maybe you would argue to prove a point. Maybe you would, try to force them to do something, like to put them in a corner. But you can't corner them. If there is a legal situation, yes, you might be able to do that. But in private, personal life, that's not going to happen. Because when you tell the abusive woman what's wrong, she knows how to hurt you more. I can't remember where it was, but I remember reading a forum or some kind of magazine for women who many of them were abusive. And one said something to the effect of, when the man tells her what is hurting him, that's like validated market research. It tells her exactly what to hit because her victim has told her. So she may feign some kind of remorse for a little while. She may pretend that she feels sorry. She may make you think that there is a chance that things are going to be different, right? If you've seen the show Cheaters, you always see the cheater like crying, "Oh, I'm sorry." They're not sorry. They're not sorry. So you have to learn how not to try to get closure from that person, right? If somebody robs your home and you find out where they live, you cannot go and knock on the person's home and say, "Hey, you robbed me. Can you please give me my stuff back and compensate me for this?" It's not going to happen. In a perfect world, you should have no problem. You should have no problem getting some kind of justice from the family courts, but unfortunately, there's no justice. Any justice that you get will be directly proportional to how little you need that justice in order to feel good about yourself or in any other shape form. The less you need it, the less you want it, the more likely you are to get it. Is it fair? No. But if it was fair, it wouldn't be abuse, would it? That's why it's abuse. The abuser is aware of what he or she can do to hurt people and get away with it. And to what extent? So you're not going to get that response, that validation. It's simply not going to happen. It's unfair, it's wrong, it's painful, and it's hard to accept. But it's one of the most crucial, most essential, most necessary elements of healing and of actually getting justice, of actually getting closure. It will get to a point you will not even care about an apology or an admission or whatever. You will actually find closure through your own process. You know, when I won my situations, that was part of my closure. But part of my closure came by understanding what went on. Part of my closure came from looking at myself and asking myself, how did I put myself in this position? How did I put myself in this situation? Why am I allowing another human being to mistreat me when I have the capacity to protect myself and not to be in this situation? So why am I here? I have no intention of living my life as a victim, right? I was a victim once, but at some point you have to let go of that because you're not a victim anymore. Life is moving forward. Life goes on. Life goes on. And a lot of us make the mistake of thinking, I'll hold on to this pain, I'll hold on to this trauma until something outside of me resolves it, when justice resolves it, when truth resolves it. But no, that's how you get stuck. That's how you get caught up and can't move on from someone who just has no regard for you as a human being. I've heard people say they feel more guilty about hurting an animal than a person, and they like hurting people. There are people like that. It's so scary to think of it, but there are people that way. There are people who are that way. And they don't care about you. So when you have a society where females are conditioned that they're entitled to things, when females are conditioned to believe that you somehow owe them, right? That they are oppressed. So whatever you have, whatever advantage you have that you've worked out for yourself or you were born with, you owe them something for it. And you're not going to convince them otherwise. The only thing that can change such a woman's mind is when she lets go of her beliefs, and she'll only do that either something bad happens or she'll see a guy she really wants, and she'll realize, wait a minute, the only way I can be with him is if I change. That is the truth. But either way, that's not something for you to worry about. You see, a lot of people wrongly think that I'm against men in this situation, that I'm blaming the victim or other such nonsense. No. What I want is something that works, that actually gets you out of the situation. Out. Right? So not something that merely, gives you a feeling of accomplishment. No, I want something that takes you out, allows you to focus on yourself, your business, your children, your work, your education, whatever it is that you're focusing your life on. Because anything else would be shortchanging yourself, would be depriving yourself of the best life you could have. I don't know if I'll ever share my full story of what I went through, because it's something that I want to remain in the past. What I know I can do is to give parts of it, but more importantly, share the lessons of what I've done. And as I've mentioned before, a lot of people would say, oh, you were lucky to get the results you got. And those people really don't understand the amount of pain I went through and the amount of work and effort I had to go through. The fear that I felt, the humiliation, the disrespect, the despair, the lack of support. In fact, people turned on me. There are people who don't speak to me till this day because of what happened. I believe half of those people who don't want to speak to me, if not more, realized they were wrong, and now they're too ashamed to accept they were wrong. But that's how it is. And you will have to find the courage to go through that too. Unfortunately, there is no way out of this without some more pain. And sometimes the pain you have to go through will be worse than the pain of the abuse. Yes, sometimes getting out of the abuse is more painful than staying, which is why people stay. So we have another reason why people stay, why men stay. The pain of getting out of the abusive situation is sometimes, often greater than the abuse itself. Leaving an abusive situation is often more painful than the abuse itself. So a lot of men stay with sexy, beautiful, but abusive women because of all the hurt that they will face when leaving those women, the loss of status, the loss of access to the sex that they may have enjoyed. Obviously, loss of contact with children in many cases, loss of wealth. Those are some of the reasons why men stay with abusive women. But those are not good reasons to stay with abusive women. There's no good reason. There's no good reason. So, what can you do right now? If you are going through family court and you know your ex is abusive, one of the most important things to do is to thoroughly document the abuse. Dates, time. You have to get your story right, you get your story straight. So if it comes up in court, or when it comes up in court, you can present it correctly. Because the opposition and the court will poke holes in your story. You have to be solid, and you have to know that it's already against you. When there's a situation where you have the option of pressing charges, press charges, again, seek legal advice for this. But if somebody's abusing you and you can get that person liable, you should. And I'm saying this because if you are not willing to get that person liable on your own accord, your own account, why do you want anybody from outside, or how do you expect anybody from outside to hold that person liable? If you say, oh, it's okay, officer, you don't need to arrest her, how do you come back 3 months later and say, nobody cares about my hurt? Nobody cares about the fact that I was abused, right? Even if you think you won't be believed, report it. Because remember, she may also, and very likely will, bring false accusations against you. And when you face those false allegations, you will wish you reported the situation so that those false lies couldn't have been made in the first place. You really, really have to do that. But even more importantly, you need to find your exit plan if you're not yet out. You need to plan your escape in a way that she cannot realize that you're about to leave. And that's why you need to speak to a lawyer to know exactly what your options are. You can also get in touch with me at bravefathers.com, wherever you are in the world. I have a small network of people that have information, right? In future, I'll try to build this up into something else, but they have information about what to do in different parts of the world. I try to always expand my connections so that when people get in touch, I can help them. So just reach out through bravefathers.com. If you are in immediate danger, of course, call the emergency number, wherever you are. So, to summarize what we discussed today, why do men stay with abusive women? They stay because they find those women sexy and attractive, and they feel and think they can't get that kind of attractiveness from a woman elsewhere, or to be very difficult for them to get it, or it may take a long time for them to get that. They stay because these men often don't know they are being abused. They think it's normal. Society teaches us through media, through stories, through people's behaviors, that it's normal for a woman to act aggressive or put you down or insult you because it's just her feelings. And you show your manhood, your masculinity, by tolerating it, by calming her down. And I've had arguments with fools on X about this. They'll literally post how their wife was bitchy and think they are an alpha male, or whatever it is that they think they are, that they are masculine for taking it for 4, 5, 6 hours, and later she smiled. Like, why people put themselves through this is why we are here today. But they'll literally post about them taking abuse the whole day, and they think they are a big man for taking it successfully. No. Men stay because they don't have experience with dating. So again, they don't know how to get women, and they don't have the experience to discern between a good woman and one that they shouldn't be with. They don't have enough experience with women to know that there are women out there who treat you like a king that you are. They will. They'll love you and respect you. Many stay because they want closure. They get fooled by the false apologies, the false premises, by the woman begging them to stay. she might even stop the abusive behavior for a little while to rope you back in, to make sure you don't escape her clutches. And when I talk to clients, like that's one of the hardest parts. Because sometimes they'll say, oh, I got this message, she sent me this. Oh, but she did this good thing. Doesn't it mean that she's changing, or doesn't it mean that it's not that bad? No, it doesn't mean that. I told one guy who told me his story, I said, look, when you want to catch some fish, don't you give the fish bait that the fish likes? When you want to trap someone with honey, you give them honey, something sweet. That doesn't mean there's no poison in that honey, right? So the fact that she's being nice and sweet means nothing. But again, because we are raised to think that women are good and we are bad, we discount the possibility of her actually being evil. We discount the reality that she knows what she's doing, that this is predetermined, premeditated, thought out abuse. And it's sad to see so many men today trapped in relationships. Some stay for children, right? Because they're afraid to lose contact with children. They're afraid to lose their hard work and the wealth they have accumulated. But no, you know, if you think it's worth it, then you stay. There's nothing I can do for you. As I said earlier, many also stay because the pain of leaving is greater than the abuse. But what these people don't realize is that it changes over time. It will get to a point where you heal, where the pain goes away. And you realize that, whoa, there's a way better life than what you had before. And it's a painful realization because time is gone, isn't it? You can't reverse the time anymore. You can't get back those years. You can't get back that energy, and whatever resources you put into it is gone. So sort of a sunk cost fallacy, where a man would think, I've put so much in, I can't just afford to lose it all. So the conclusion for today is, you can't live your life as a victim. If you are a victim, you must change that. There is a legitimate case to be made for being a victim. But being a victim cannot be a permanent state. You can't stay a victim forever because there is no justice for victims. You have to find a way to thrive to the degree where you won't believe what happened to you in the past. You'll be so far ahead of the game that you won't even recognize the man you were before. And that's when you become really powerful, especially when you fight in family court, because your opponent will not be ready for that. They will not be able to read your actions. They will not be able to understand how to go against you. That's how you start winning, right? Because it's a step-by-step process. And for most guys, the injustice already blinds them. And for a long time, they become very ineffective and very unable to think. And I know what it's like to be in that state. It's very difficult. It's very difficult, especially if you don't have any help on what to do and how to do it. Especially when your family and friends don't believe you. where they think that whatever happened to you is just in your mind, or that you're exaggerating it and it's not as serious as you make it appear to be. But I believe you. I know it's true. I've seen it for myself. There are women who are extremely abusive. Some look very innocent. Some look very sexy, beautiful, and attractive. They look like they couldn't hit a fly. I remember one girl I used to date, and once she had an episode, I was like, well, I would never have thought. And that's perhaps one of the early times when I started realizing that how a woman looks doesn't really make a difference as to how she's going to behave. It's not the looks that define the quality of a woman. And of course, I understand you want somebody that you're sexually attracted to, but that's not what defines the woman. So I'm going to leave this here. If you need help with your UK family court case, go to bravefathers.com, click on the link below to go to bravefathers.com. If you want to talk about your relationship wherever you're in the world, or even your court case, I'm not a lawyer, but I know a lot of strategies and I'm happy to share with you. If you're struggling to live an abusive relationship as a man, as a father, get in touch with me. I'll help you out. Click on the link below and go to bravefathers.com. And of course, give a like to this episode, leave a comment, subscribe so we can talk more. If you disagree, let me know. Now, I'm going to see you again soon. Thank you so much. If you've not watched all the other episodes, there's quite a few to go through. And of course, get in touch if there's something you want me to discuss on air. And whichever way you go, remember, when in doubt, you are the truth. Thank you. This is John Paul from bravefathers.com. Thank you for watching.
BraveFathers.com.